The music stopped before anyone touched the speaker. It died the very second the marble doors slammed open, loud enough to echo across the entire penthouse, loud enough to make the dancing girl in the center of the room freeze mid-spin, her breath caught in her throat. And suddenly, the world went silent. The lights seemed colder. The air felt thinner. Even the city noise from 92 floors below faded, swallowed by a fear so sharp it could cut glass. She wasn't supposed to be here like this. Not barefoot, not smiling, not dancing, and certainly not singing with a voice that didn't belong to the staff of a billionaire mafia boss. But there she was, Aria Lane, standing in the middle of Damien Blackwood's living room, chest rising and falling, cheeks flushed with joy that vanished the instant she realized she had an audience. Not just any audience. Him. The man whose shadow stretched farther than the skyline behind him. The man whose silence scared grown men. The man whose anger destroyed careers, reputations, and sometimes entire families. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. He simply watched her, dark suit sharp as a blade, eyes colder than winter, framed by the towering glass walls that overlooked a city that worshipped him. Behind him, Victoria Hale stepped in with a wicked smile curling her red lips. "There," she whispered loudly enough for every staff member to hear. Caught like a thief. The other workers stood at a distance, maids, a chef, 2 cleaners, each one frozen with terror because they all knew what this moment meant. No one used the Penthouse sound system. No one danced. No one touched anything that belonged to Damien Blackwood unless instructed. Rules were not suggestions in this household. They were commandments. Victoria glided forward, heels stabbing the marble like insults. "You're unbelievable, Aria. You can't even pretend to be useful for one day," she spat. "Dancing? Singing? In his house? Are you mad?" Aria lowered her head, clutching the hem of her simple uniform to keep her hands from trembling. Her voice, seconds ago a river of freedom, was now stuck, blocked by humiliation that tasted metallic in her mouth. I'm sorry, ma'am," she whispered. "I didn't know anyone would." "You didn't know? Victoria Hist. You're a maid. You're paid to know what respect looks like." The staff stared at the floor. No one dared step in. Not when Victoria was spiraling. Not when Damien stood rigid as a carved statue beside her. Victoria scoffed, then stepped closer until Aria could feel her perfume. Expensive, sharp, loud. "You know what bothers me most?" Victoria declared, her voice dripping venom. "You looked happy, as if you forgot what you are." Aria's eyes stung. Another blow came, fast, unexpected. "Turn around," Victoria commanded. Aria obeyed. Victoria pointed at her back with a sneer. "Look at the sweat on her uniform. Look at the footprint she left on the white carpet. And my God, is that one of Damien's wine glasses missing from the counter?" It wasn't, but the lie didn't matter. Humiliation was already spreading through Aria like wildfire. Victoria raised her voice again. "This will not repeat itself. Damien, darling, fire her. Now." A gasp rippled through the workers. Aria's throat tightened. She stared at Damien, careful, cautious, trembling. He hadn't moved an inch since he walked in. His expression was unreadable, carved from stone and shadow. She wished he would just shout, just yell. At least then she would know what was coming. But his silence was worse. It wrapped around her like a cold fog. He stepped forward slowly. Victoria smiled, victory glistening in her eyes. This was it. Aria braced herself. But Damien didn't look at Victoria. He didn't look at the workers. He looked directly at Aria. And something unexpected flickered in his eyes, like recognition or memory or something softer than the world believed he was capable of. "Who told you to stop?" he asked quietly. Aria blinked. "Es, sir. Victoria Estefeneth." The staff exchanged frantic glances. Damien's voice remained calm, deep, unreadable. "I asked," he repeated. "Who told you to stop singing?" Aria's mouth fell open slightly, not in defiance, but in disbelief. "No one told me to stop, sir. You walked in." A ghost of emotion crossed his face. It wasn't anger. It was something stranger, something warmer, something confused. Victoria stepped in again, her voice shrill. "Damien, don't be ridiculous." He lifted a hand. It was enough to silence her, enough to silence the entire room. Aria tried to breathe normally, but her heart was pounding against her ribs like it was trying to escape. Damien took another step toward her. "You were dancing," he said. Aria nodded, trembling. "You were singing?" Another nod. He studied her, really studied her, for the first time in 2 years of working for him, as if he had never truly seen her until this very moment. The room waited. The world waited. Finally, he spoke again. "You should finish cleaning the living room." That was it. No shouting. No fighting. No rai. Just instructions. The disappointment on Victoria's face was almost louder than any scream. Aria exhaled shakily and nodded. "Why, yes, sir." Damien turned away, but something in him had already shifted. Something no one else in that penthouse noticed, because they were too busy whispering, too busy sighing in relief, too busy avoiding Victoria's deadly glare. Only Aria felt it. A strange warmth. A question left hanging in the air. An emotion she couldn't name. But she didn't have time to process it, because Victoria marched toward her again. "This isn't over," she spat under her breath. "Enjoy your borrowed time." Aria swallowed down her tears. She bent down to pick up a cloth, pretending her shaking hands were steady, pretending the humiliation didn't sting like fresh wounds. But Damien paused at the hallway entrance. His voice, low, steady, floated back. "Next time," he said without turning around, "if you're going to dance, don't use the marble floor. It's too cold." Everyone froze again. Somewhere behind her pain, a small flame of confusion and hope lit inside Aria Lane. And just like that, the scene dissolved into a question that would change everything. Why didn't he look angry? Why did he sound almost gentle? And what had he seen in her voice that made him pause? The answers were coming, but not yet. Not today. Morning in the Bronx didn't rise gently. It spilled into the world with honking buses, vendors shouting prices, and a thick smell of fried bread drifting through cracked apartment windows. And in a dim one-room flat at the end of a chipped hallway, Aria Lane woke up before the sun, as she had done every day since she was 12. Her alarm never rang. Poverty didn't need reminders. She sat up slowly, stretching her sore back, the aches from scrubbing Damien Blackwood's penthouse clinging to her muscles like invisible weights. The wooden bed beneath her creaked, and her blanket, a patched quilt her late mother stitched by hand, slid into her lap. She touched it gently. "Your voice will open the doors life closed on you," her mother always said. But life had not been generous with its doors. And though Aria sang quietly every morning, soft, warm notes filling her tiny room, the world never heard them. The streets outside swallowed her voice. The people passing by didn't look twice. And she didn't blame them. She was a maid. Invisible. Replaceable. Forgettable. She tied her hair back, brushed her uniform, and stepped out into the cold. The 6:05 a.m. train rattled across the rails like it was carrying the burdens of the city on its back. Aria gripped the handrail and exhaled deeply, trying not to replay yesterday. The dancing, the music, Victoria's voice tearing into her before Damien's strangely calm response. She should have been fired. She expected to be. But the moment he spoke, something in his tone, something unexplainable, made her heart pause. It couldn't mean anything, she told herself. Men like Damien Blackwood didn't notice girls like her. They didn't pause or soften or stare unless they were calculating how to make someone disappear. And yet, when she closed her eyes, she saw the way he looked at her. Not like a maid, but like a mystery he didn't know how to solve. She shook the thought away. Dreams were expensive. She couldn't afford them. The day dragged on. The penthouse buzzed with tension after yesterday's scene. But Aria kept her head down and worked faster than usual. Victoria wasn't home. The universe's only mercy, but the staff were on edge. By noon, Aria slipped into the service balcony to catch her breath. The city wind brushed her face. Her fingers tapped lightly against the railing. Nervous, restless, scared. She hummed a note. Just one. It escaped her lips softly, as fragile as a secret. Behind her, a voice said, "Don't stop." Aria spun so quickly she almost tripped. Damien stood at the doorway, hands in his pockets, black shirt rolled at the sleeves, looking like a storm waiting to break. But his eyes weren't cold today. They were searching. "Yes, sir," she whispered, bowing slightly. "I'm sorry, I was just singing," he finished. "I heard." Her heart hammered so loudly she wondered if he could hear that too. He stepped closer, slow and measured, as though approaching something fragile. What you did yesterday, that wasn't noise, he said. It wasn't disrespect. It was, he paused, struggling for the right word. It was real. Aria stared at him, lost. No one had said anything kind about her voice since her mother died. She tightened her fingers around the railing. It was just a song, sir. It wasn't, he murmured. And you know it. Her breath caught. His gaze held hers for a moment too long. Long enough for her to see a crack in the armor he carried everywhere. She didn't know what lived behind it, but something in him felt bruised. Something old, something heavy. Damien looked away awkwardly, clearing his throat. I need you to run an errand, he said suddenly. Something outside your usual tasks. Aria blinked. For me, sir. For you. Unease crept in her chest, but she nodded. Yes, sir. Whatever you need. He handed her a small white envelope. Unmarked, thin sealed. Take this to the address written inside, he said. You'll understand when you get there. Aria hesitated. Am I in trouble? No, his reply came instantly. Too quickly, even for him. This is part of something I'm working on. She didn't understand it, but she obeyed. After work, she walked to the address. It led her to a dusty church in Harlem, where an old woman sat by the piano, hands trembling over the keys. When Aria handed her the envelope, the woman opened it and smiled softly. He hasn't forgotten, she whispered. Aria swallowed. Forgotten what? Her, the woman said. His mother. This was her favorite place. Aria froze. This wasn't about her. This wasn't about punishment. This was about him. Sit, the woman said kindly. He told me you might sing. Aria's heartbeat stumbled. No, ma'am, Just one song, the woman insisted. For her. For you. Aria closed her eyes. She sang. Her voice filled the empty church. Warm, steady, powerful. Every note felt like a prayer rising from a wound she kept hidden. The old woman wept. Even the walls seemed to listen. By the time she finished, Aria's hands were shaking. That, the woman whispered, is a gift God hid in you. Aria couldn't speak. She left the church confused, shaken, emotional, and she didn't know Damien was standing outside the whole time in an unmarked car, watching through the tinted window, jaw clenched, wrestling with emotions he couldn't name. When Aria arrived the next morning, Damien didn't speak of the errand, didn't ask, didn't comment, but something had shifted. He gave her a new set of tasks, small, unusual ones. Organize the library. Choose the song for tonight's dinner. Help create the ambience for the fundraiser. Tests. Quiet tests. Tests of taste. Tests of courage. Tests of loyalty. She thought they were chores. He knew they were steps. Every time, she chose humility over fear, kindness over comfort, courage over silence. Something inside him healed a little. But the house began to notice the shift. Whispers spread, and on the third day, Victoria returned unexpectedly. Her heels clicked through the penthouse like bullets. Where is she? She hissed to Maid. Aria was arranging flowers in the dining hall when Victoria stormed in, voice sharp enough to slice air. Well, Victoria sneered. Look at you, acting like you own the place. Aria stepped back. Good afternoon, ma'am. Don't ma'am me, Victoria snapped. Why do I hear your name everywhere? Why is he asking about you? Why is he sending you places? Who do you think you are? Aria froze. She didn't have answers, and even if she did, she wouldn't dare speak them, because Damien Blackwood, the man with quiet storms behind his eyes, had just stepped into a doorway behind Victoria, and he heard every word. Victoria didn't know. Aria didn't breathe. Their world was about to tilt, but neither of them knew how hard. Not yet. Damien stood in the doorway like a shadow carved from steel, unmoving, unreadable, but radiating a quiet danger that made even the glass chandeliers seem to tremble. Victoria didn't sense him yet. Aria did. Every nerve in her body recognized his presence before her eyes found him. Victoria leaned in closer, her voice dripping poison. I don't know what you're trying to do, little maid, but listen carefully. Damien doesn't look at girls like you. He doesn't notice you. He only tolerates you. So wipe that pathetic hope off your face. Aria lowered her head, not out of guilt, but out of survival. I didn't do anything, ma'am, she said softly. You never do, Victoria snapped. You just exist. And even that irritates me. Before Aria could respond, Damien spoke. Victoria. His voice was calm but deadly calm. The kind of calm that made men rethink their entire existence. Victoria froze, turned, and her face drained of color when she saw him standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes darker than a storm-swept ocean. "Oh, Damien, I didn't know you were here," she stuttered. "You rarely do," he replied. Aria's fingers tightened around the vase she was arranging. She didn't dare look at either of them, but she felt the tension, thick, sharp, electric. Victoria cleared her throat and stepped closer to Damien, placing a manicured hand on his chest. "I was only correcting her behavior," she said sweetly. "That's enough," Damien said quietly. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Victoria's hand slipped from his chest, as if burned. Aria stepped back instinctively, but Damien's gaze flicked to her, soft for a split second, protective even, and that quick flash of emotion nearly knocked the breath out of her. But it was gone as fast as it appeared. He turned away. "Aria, continue what you're doing." "Yes, sir," she whispered. Victoria forced a smile through clenched teeth. "Of course, darling," she said to him. "But we'll talk later." He didn't answer. He walked out, leaving a silence behind him that Victoria immediately filled with fresh fury. "Oh, you're playing a dangerous game," Victoria hissed once he was gone. "But trust me, you will lose." Aria didn't respond, not because she agreed, but because deep inside her chest, something unexpected flickered. Courage. She wasn't sure where it came from. Maybe from the church. Maybe from her mother's memory. Maybe from the strange warmth in Damien's eyes whenever he looked at her. But she held on to it like a thread. The first real test came that evening. Damien called Aria to the private lounge, where he sat at the piano, his late mother's piano. He never let anyone enter this room. "Sit," he said simply. "Aria sat." "What do you hear?" he asked, pressing a single note. She hesitated. "Sadness," she whispered. He pressed another note. "And now?" "Memories," she said softly. He played a third note. "And this one?" Aria's eyes softened. "Love, but the kind that hurts." Damien's hands paused on the keys. She wasn't wrong. She didn't know how deeply she wasn't wrong. He leaned back slightly, studying her. "You hear what others don't." "It's just music, sir." "No," he said quietly. "It's truth." He stood, walked to a small shelf, and handed her a sealed envelope. "Deliver this. Bring back whatever they give you." Another errand. Another test. This one led her to a music studio, old, dusty, untouched, where a producer with silver hair listened to her voice for less than a minute before nodding knowingly. "So she's the one," he murmured. Aria frowned. "The one for what?" "For his mother's song," the man said. "He's been searching for a voice to finish her last recording." Aria's heart nearly stopped. Damien Blackwood, ruthless, distant, feared, was trying to resurrect a piece of his mother's legacy. And somehow, without her knowing, Aria had stepped into the center of that wound. The producer gave her a small flash drive. "Take this to him, and don't lose it. It means more to him than his fortune." Aria walked back to the penthouse with careful steps, heart pounding, questions swirling. But danger was waiting. Victoria was seated in the living room with two relatives, sharp-tongued, judgmental, hungry for gossip. When Aria entered, Victoria's eyes narrowed. "What's that in your hand?" she demanded. "A delivery from Mr. Blackwood," Aria said softly. "Give it here." Aria tightened her grip. "He asked me to." "I said give it here." Victoria's voice exploded. The room fell silent. Aria's hands trembled. "I can't." Something in Victoria snapped. She lunged forward, snatching the flash drive and holding it up like a weapon. A maid carrying confidential material? Damien must be out of his mind. Aria panicked. "Please, ma'am, it's important." Victoria stepped closer and whispered so only Aria could hear. "If you don't disappear from this house, I will make sure you regret the day you were born." Aria shook her head, breath quickening. "I didn't do anything wrong." But Victoria smiled, a cold, cruel smile. "That's the problem. You exist." She pushed Aria so hard the girl stumbled backward into a coffee table, crashing against it with a painful thud. The relatives gasped but said nothing. They never said anything. Aria bit her lip, fighting tears. Then the elevator chimed. Damien stepped out. Victoria quickly hid the flash drive behind her back. Aria scrambled to stand, but her knee buckled. Damien rushed forward faster than she'd ever seen him move. "What happened?" he demanded. Victoria answered first. "She tripped. She's clumsy." Aria opened her mouth. Damien's hand lifted gently, an unspoken request to let him handle it. He knelt beside Aria. "Are you hurt?" "No, sir," she whispered, even though she was. His eyes softened, almost the same way they had that day he found her dancing. He stood slowly, turning to Victoria, voice turning colder than steel. "Where is the drive?" Victoria froze. Damien took one step toward her. "I asked," he repeated softly, "where is the drive?" Victoria's face twisted, fear, jealousy, rage, before she snapped back into a mask of innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about." He didn't blink, didn't look away, didn't fall for it. "Search the house," he ordered the security team behind him. "Every room, every corner." Victoria's mouth fell open. "You're searching the house because of her?" she screamed. Damien's voice was cold enough to shatter ice. "Because of you." And that was the moment Victoria realized she was losing him. Really losing him. Not to another socialite. Not to another billionaire heiress. To the maid she thought she could crush. The test was complete. Aria had passed. Victoria had failed. But the storm brewing in her eyes made one thing painfully clear. She wasn't done fighting. Not even close. The storm did not strike immediately. It waited. It gathered itself behind closed doors, behind Victoria Hale's trembling smile, behind the relatives' whispers, behind every jealous glance that followed Aria Lane through the penthouse halls. And it struck the moment Aria least expected, on the night Damien prepared to host one of the most important gatherings of the year, the Blackwood Legacy Dinner, a night when New York's elite, business titans, foreign diplomats, and the hidden kings of the underworld filled the mansion with polished shoes and whispered alliances. A night when reputation was currency. A night when humiliation cut deepest. Aria arrived early, wearing her simple Maid uniform, her knees still stiff from the fall Victoria caused. She moved quietly, arranging glasses, straightening seat covers, adjusting the lighting as Damien instructed earlier. She wanted tonight to go perfectly. Not for Victoria, not for the guests. For him, but trouble was already sharpening its claws. By 7 p.m., the mansion buzzed with expensive perfumes and colder secrets. Victoria glided through the crowd in a shimmering gown, pretending her engagement ring still meant something, pretending she still had Damien's heart in her pocket. She didn't, but she had a plan, and Aria walked straight into it. When the first toast ended and the guests applauded politely, Victoria raised her voice. "Everyone, I have something important to show you. Something disturbing." Heads turned. Cameras lifted. Conversations paused. Aria froze where she stood near the entrance, a tray in her hands, heart suddenly pounding. Victoria smiled, a cruel, twisted smile that glittered under the chandelier. With Damien's permission, she lied, "I need to expose a betrayal happening right inside this home." Damien stiffened across the room. "Victoria," he warned. She ignored him and held up a phone. "No more secrets," she declared dramatically. "This is your precious maid." A video began to play on a large screen behind her. Aria gasped. It was footage, edited, spliced from different days. Aria entering Damien's private lounge. Aria carrying the envelope. Aria inside the old music studio. Aria speaking to the old producer. It was cut to look like she was stealing information, delivering it, collaborating with someone dangerous. Gasps rippled across the room. Someone whispered, "Is she a spy?" Another murmured, "Blackwood's security is failing." Another hissed, "A maid?" In a private piano room. Aria's tray slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor. The room spun. Her throat closed. Her legs shook. Victoria pointed at her dramatically. "Caught. Red-handed. Betraying the man who feeds her." Aria shook her head desperately. No, I didn't." "Oh, shut up," Victoria barked. "You think anyone here will believe you over me?" Damien stepped forward immediately. "Stop this," he said. But Victoria wasn't finished. She brought out the final weapon, the flash drive he cherished. This, she declared, was in her pocket. She stole it. She planned to leak it. A wave of shock rolled through the guests. Damien's jaw clenched so hard the air around him trembled. Aria couldn't breathe. She whispered, "Sir, I swear I didn't." Victoria stepped toward Damien, holding up the drive like a trophy. "You trusted her, and she betrayed you." Aria felt her heart crack, because Damien didn't speak. He just stared at her, expression unreadable, eyes clouded with memory, confusion, hurt. The silence stabbed deeper than any insult. Aria forced out words, choking on tears. You said to take it. You sent me to that studio. You said I'd understand. Silence. Victoria snapped. Lies won't save you. The guests murmured loudly now. Rich voices, powerful voices, voices that judged without mercy. And in the middle of them all, Aria Lane stood like a burning photograph. Fading, hurting, exposed. Damien finally spoke. Everyone leave. Now. It wasn't a shout. It was the calm before a hurricane. The guests hurried out, whispering and glancing back, hungry for drama. Only the inner circle remained. Victoria, her relatives, Damien's trusted advisors, and Aria, trembling like a leaf in winter. Victoria approached him, voice trembling with fake concern. You deserve better than someone who sneaks around behind your back. Damien didn't reply. Instead, he turned to Aria. Look at me. Aria lifted her tear-filled eyes. One question, he said. Did you do this? No, sir, she whispered. Never. He studied her face, every tremor, every breath, every tear. Then, he turned away. That hurt more than accusation. It felt like the world collapsing. Victoria smirked behind him, victorious. Security, she ordered boldly. Escort the maid out. Touch her, Damien said in a voice colder than death. And I end you. Victoria froze. Everyone froze. Damien turned slowly, dangerously, toward Victoria. You want the truth? He took the flash drive from her shaking hand. You want proof? He connected it into the projector. A video appeared, different from the edited one she showed. The real footage from his mother's studio. Aria singing with heartbreak and purity that filled the room like a sunrise breaking through darkness. Gasps echoed again, but softer this time, awed. Damien stepped beside Aria. Not in front of her, not behind her. Beside her. My mother wrote this song before she died, he said, voice thickening. I have spent 10 years searching for a voice that could finish it. He looked at Aria, not with confusion, not with suspicion, but with emotion. She has that voice. The room rippled. Victoria's face cracked. Damien wasn't done. He tapped his remote. More footage played, this time from the security cameras outside the studio. The producer. The conversation. Victoria's cousins following Aria. Victoria stealing the flash drive. Victoria pushing Aria to the floor. The truth flashed across the room like lightning. Damien faced Victoria head-on. You didn't expose a betrayal, he said. You manufactured one. Victoria trembled. Damien, baby, I was protecting. You were destroying. His words landed like fists. Then the final blow. He removed the engagement ring from his finger and placed it on the table between them. It's over. Victoria's mouth fell open. Her knees gave way. Her world ended. Damien turned to Aria. And in front of everyone, he lifted her chin gently, exactly the way Victoria once mocked her for imagining. Look up, he whispered. Her tears fell. From today, he said softly, no one treats you like you're invisible. He took her hand, slowly, deliberately. Gasps echoed across the room again, some in shock, some in admiration, some in tears. She stood when others lied, he said. She sang when the world tried to silence her. She is not beneath anyone. Aria trembled. He wasn't finished. At the Blackwood Gala next month, he announced, voice echoing, she performs my mother's final song. Aria covered her mouth, sobbing. And if the world has a problem with that, Damien added, it can take it up with me. It was the moment the city would talk about for years. The maid who rose. The fiancé who fell. The billionaire whose heart finally woke up. That night, as the mansion emptied and the last whispers faded, Aria stood on the balcony alone, staring at the city lights. Damien joined her quietly. You didn't believe me at first, she whispered. I believed you, he said gently. I just didn't believe myself. Her tears glistened in the night. What now? She breathed. He took her hand, softly, with no force, no expectation, no fear. Now, he said, we rebuild the parts of us life tried to bury. And for the first time in her life, Aria Lane felt seen. Fully, completely, unapologetically. In this life, people will judge you for your uniform, your paycheck, your silence, or your past. But destiny cares only about your heart. Aria's rise reminds us that God lifts the humble, exposes hidden cruelty, and honors those who stay true even when no one is watching. If you've ever felt overlooked, remember, your voice, your gift, your courage still matter. Thank you for listening to this story. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Nemi's Folktales, share with someone who needs hope, and comment what lesson touched you today. Your engagement keeps these stories alive.